If you are looking to play out your Lord of the Rings fantasies with huge battles and epic quests that take you across the far reaches of Middle-earth, this product is probably not for you. But hold on, stick around, because it actually is really good. Hi everyone, my name is Nate, and you are watching WASD20, a channel about tabletop RPGs and fantasy maps. I believe it was 2011 when Cubicle 7 first released the One Ring RPG to great acclaim. The game was discontinued a couple of years ago, but fortunately, Free League acquired the rights to publish a second edition of the game, and it came to Kickstarter back in early 2021, and these two products are a big part of that campaign. The setting for the game is Eriador in the years between the events of The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring. The starter set, which we'll be reviewing today, is really good, but I do think it's important to note that this product puts you in the role of hobbits in the Shire, and doesn't really get us beyond that at all. Now, I'll evaluate that choice a little more at the end of the video, but I do think it's a really cool choice that won't be for everyone. If you want to get some more epic, grand-scale adventures that put you in the roles of men, dwarves, and elves as well, you can always skip right to the core book. But I do think there is a place for this series of quaint little adventures in this little corner of Middle-earth that Tolkien so lovingly crafted. Now, there are links to these and a few other One Ring products down in the video description, and many of those are affiliate links. Purchasing through them does help support the channel at no extra cost to you. Now let's take a look and open the box. First off, really high quality hard box here, which I appreciate, and that's something you'll notice throughout. There's just really high quality. They really made good use of space in the box too. On this one we've got some basic rules. It's almost like a DM screen that you could use, and on the other side there's actually a nice little map, so also a really nice touch. We've got some cards here, and these also really high quality cards, not just cheap cardboard. On one side they have the different roles on journeys, and on the other side they've got the different stances in combat. Now, one note about this rule set here actually doesn't include the rules for journeys, and it doesn't have all of the stances. It only has close combat and ranged combat. So cool that they included them, but you don't really use them so much with this set. Personally, I'm fine with that. I do have the core rules as well, where these will fully be used, and it's nice to have them. We've got some item cards here. We've got weapons and armor and shields. On one side we've got some art, and on the reverse side you do have some stats. The dice. So there is actually a printing error on these dice that are with my Kickstarter set. Depending on when you got yours, you might not have the same error, but if you see 11s on your D12, that is actually an error. It's supposed to be 2 through 10 and then some other funky symbols. So we'll talk more about the dice when we get to the rules, but there's also these D6s. These are called success dice. They are going to be replacing these dice free of charge, so if you do see the 11s, it might be worth contacting Free League's customer service. Next up, we've got a big old map. On one side, it is the Shire, and man, I absolutely love this map. Like, looking at this map and just kind of looking at little sections, I actually feel like I'm exploring the Shire and discovering new things every time I look at it. And on the other side, we've got this map of Eriador, which is the larger region that the Shire is a part of. And it's also just a great looking map with such nice little touches with these border illustrations. I love them. Now we get into the 3 books. So included here are the rules, the adventures, and the Shire. The rule book is only about 25 pages, so it's definitely an abbreviated version of the rules. It doesn't include a lot of the stuff like shadow, journeys, the full rules for combat stances. It doesn't have anything on death. So definitely a pretty abbreviated rule set, but I think that is nice to ease new players into the game, which I think is the goal of a good starter set. To explain some of the basics of the rules, I think I'll actually grab a character sheet and we'll grab some dice and just do a sample roll. So here I've got Lobelia Bracegirdle. She's a hobbit. All of the pre-generated characters that you start with are hobbits. Let's say we want to be sneaky. We would be making a stealth roll, and our target number is a 12. But here we've got my D12 feat die, and you're always going to be rolling that to resolve actions. So we'll get that out. Now the other thing is, because I have this as a favored skill, see how it's darkened in there, I actually get to roll 2 D12s and take the highest. Next, you can see that I've got 3 of these squares filled in, and that means I get to roll 3 success dice in addition. I'm going for a 12. All right, so we're gonna make this roll now to resolve this action of trying to sneak. And okay, I got a 2 and a 10, so we're definitely going to be keeping that 10 rather than the 2. And then here we've got 6 to 8. So it looks like I got a total of 18, which is a really good roll. So I definitely beat the target and was successful in that action. Now, a couple other things to note about the dice. There are some other symbols. This is the Gandalf symbol, and this is like a critical success. You always succeed if you roll on that. On the other side of that coin, you've got the Eye of Sauron, and this is like a critical failure. You always fail if you roll that. In addition, if you get a 6, you'll notice this little symbol here. Depending on how many of those symbols you get, you can also do something extraordinary or memorable if you get 1 or 2 of those, even more so. Now, in terms of the rules for combat, I'll just give an abbreviated version of the already abbreviated rules here. You would select a stance of close combat or ranged combat. There's a description of engagement here, kind of who you're going to be fighting and who's attacking you. And then with attack rolls resolution here, it says the difficulty of all attack rolls by the player heroes is based on their strength target number, modified by the parry rating of the targeted enemy. So for Lobelia Bracegirdle here, let's say we want to attack with our sword. I'm going to be rolling 1 of my feat dice, and I'm going to be rolling 2 of my success dice. My target number is going to be a 16 because Lobelia is not particularly strong, so that's going to be a little bit challenging for me. Now let's say that I'm attacking Jack the Stone Troll. His parry is +1, so I'm actually going to have to roll a 17 in order to succeed. We'll see if I can do this. All right, that landed on an 8, plus 5 is 13, plus 2 is 15, so I do not succeed on my attack. Now, if I did succeed, I would be taking the stats of my sword. You can see damage 4 here, and I would be subtracting 4 from the endurance, which would bring the Stone Troll's endurance down to 30. Armor only really comes into play when you get a piercing blow, which is explained right here. And anyway, there's more to the rules than this, but that's just a basic overview of how action resolution and combat work. Next, let's talk about the adventure book. You start to see a little bit of a different art style in this one, these full-page color spreads. I think they're okay, but I definitely prefer this really nice, just black and white pencil sketch sort of art. It looks really nice. There will be some very minor spoilers here, but I'm not going to get very specific as I talk about the adventures. Now, I like the format of this adventure book because it has 5 very short adventures. These are definitely like one-shots that can be strung together. And the basic idea in these adventures is that Bilbo Baggins himself has called a number of younger hobbits together to perform some minor quests for him. And most of them take the form of kind of fetch quests, retrieving artifacts around the Shire. As I mentioned in the intro, these are not high epic adventures going on far-flung journeys. These are just little adventures going through the Shire. You have to sneak around guard dogs and cross rivers and things like that. And once in a while, there is the possibility of combat. For example, this stone troll here. Although combat is definitely not your only option in dealing with some of the obstacles you face. Overall, I really like these adventures. They are quite short. It seems like they would probably only take about an hour and a half or 2 hours to complete. They seem to be pretty well formatted and well explained, but I will say there is a lot of read aloud text. The intro, for example, has you reading this, and this. So that's probably the longest one, but even some of the other ones are quite long, as you can see. Things like this right here, or this right here. Especially if I'm playing with kids, that's just going to be way too long. But even for adults, like I just don't like to listen to that much read aloud text in general. But yeah, these adventures really just seem like a fun romp around the Shire that I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy. Speaking of the Shire, there's this whole book on the Shire. This is 52 pages. It's actually the largest book of the bunch. And I'm not a big fan of lore and history and stuff, but I did really enjoy this. I find I generally have very little patience for it, but this sucked me in. Maybe it's because of my existing love of the subject matter. You know, I read The Hobbit when I was in 6th or 7th grade for the first time and absolutely fell in love with Middle-earth and hobbits and all that stuff. So if you're like me and you have some love for the subject matter, I think you're going to really enjoy learning more about it. And I really did learn a ton about the history of the Shire, of hobbits, and the different towns and regions and cultures. So even if you are tempted to skip the starter set, I'll just put that out there. Some of you might really like this book on the Shire. Lastly, we've got the pre-generated characters here. Now, slight spoilers ahead for the adventure. Yes, you do have to start with hobbits. But as you progress through the adventure, you do get the ability to play as 1. Bilbo Baggins himself, and 2. Balin, son of Fundin, a dwarf. So that's a fun little touch, and yeah, all of these hobbits here are in some way related to the hero hobbits of The Lord of the Rings. So that's another really nice touch. And I generally do like pre-generated characters for starter sets because it enables newer players to just jump right into actually playing the game. And there's some nice description on the back of each. So that concludes what's in the box. So now we're going to summarize the good and the not so good, and we'll start with the good. Firstly, the Shire, hobbits. I mean, if you're a role-playing gamer who enjoys the Shire and hobbits as much as I do, you're going to want to pick this up. This is a true love letter to that little slice of Middle-earth. It is clearly made by people who share our love of the subject matter, and it just feels authentically faithful to Tolkien's work. Secondly, bigger is not always better, and I think this proves it. Sometimes you just want a smaller scale adventure. I kind of compare it to something like Mouse Guard. Sometimes it just feels good not to be playing some huge epic quest where the fate of the world is at stake, and just to kind of slow things down for a minute and enjoy some good times walking through the Shire. It's an easier pace, a little more lighthearted, and I think sometimes we all need that. Next, I really love the cool little connections to characters we know, like Bilbo Baggins and some of the relatives of other hobbits. I think that's really cool, and even though you could argue it's just a bit of fan service, I think people are really going to enjoy it, and I think it walks that line really well of not just jumping right into, I am Aragorn, but still giving you some connections to things you know. Secondly, I really like the game aids, the little weapon and armor cards, and the stance and journey cards. Even though they aren't all used in this box, I appreciate having them. And I'm guessing this box may have just been an easier way to pack in some of those extras, the aids to the core game, or maybe it's just a way of kind of teasing and getting us to want to play the core game. I don't know. And lastly, there's the production value. Free League seems to always deliver on really high quality stuff, both the physical quality of it as well as the layout and the art. It's all excellent. So I absolutely love this product, but I think there are some possible downsides depending on your perspective. Firstly, I think it's not really a great representation of the full core game. A lot of box sets, I think, do a better job of giving you kind of a cross-section of the sorts of things that you'll discover in the core game. I've actually got some other box sets right here that I'll pull off the shelf for examples. So I think some of these products actually do a bit of a better job of kind of giving you a cross-section of the sorts of things you'll expect in the core games. Now, I kind of do look at that in a bit of a different way and think of this as actually adding value by giving you something a little bit different. Another possible downside is that this isn't really that well set up for long-term ongoing play. You could say, yeah, duh, that's kind of the point of the starter set, Nate. And to that, I would say I think the D&D starter set or Essentials kit actually do a bit of a better job of setting you up for now go and create your own campaigns. I think you're more likely to be satisfied with the amount they set up than with this. I think players pretty soon are going to want to push the boundaries and go into other parts of Middle-earth, play some other cultures or races, and visit some of the other locations. And rules for journeys, for shadow, for death will really enhance that experience. So I think you could probably poke some holes in this argument, but either way, good or bad, I think it's going to leave you wanting more. So in that way, maybe it's an effective kind of gateway drug to the rest of the game. One last downside to mention is the price. $50 at retail is a bit steep for a starter set. That's quite a bit more than other ones I've purchased, and I think it does make skipping the starter set and just going right to the core book for only $10 more a bit more appealing. You might be able to find it a bit under retail depending on where you buy it, but at the end of the day, I do feel $50 is worth what you're getting. Anyway, I would love to hear what you think down in the comments below. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them for me. I'd love to hear from you. And before we go, I do want to thank the WASD20 patrons for their support. Patrons get access to some really cool rewards, things like weekly live map drawing streams with me, as well as some other cool stuff. So go check it out over at patreon.com/WASD20. And thank you so much, patrons. Once again, another way you can support the channel is by buying through my affiliate links down in the video description. I have some for Absolute Tabletop, Amazon.com, and DriveThruRPG. And that's going to do it for this one, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. You'll see me again very soon.